So thanks again for the introduction. Really excited to be here. Maybe we can just start with some brief introductions and let's get started.
Yeah, so I'm Sam. I'm a theoretical physicist by training. Became a bioengineer because I felt like biology is the science that's most likely to have the biggest impact on the largest number of people in our lifetimes through medicine, food, climate. So got really excited about that. And I am working on launching a new philanthropically funded moonshot aimed at building an AI scientist. That is to say, an AI that can do science itself with the goal of accelerating scientific research, of actually using insights from scientific reasoning to improve kind of like general artificial intelligence. And also, I think importantly, especially in the context of the conversation we just heard, figuring out how to bring cutting-edge expertise in science, medicine, and engineering to the entire world by making it much more accessible.
It's a tough act to follow, Sam. I'm Justin Hotard. I lead the high-performance computing and artificial intelligence business at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And you may not know the company, but we're one of the derivatives of Hewlett-Packard. And more importantly, we power some of the world's largest and fastest supercomputers. So what that means is that we touch almost every part of your daily life. So if you've checked the weather today, that forecast was generated on a supercomputer. Probably, if you've used any kind of AI, it was probably trained using a supercomputer. And then many of our users are using AI and using supercomputing to power tremendous advances and breakthroughs. So a good example is if you think about the COVID pandemic, the way that we accelerated one of the ways we accelerated the vaccine to production was researchers at one of the U.S. Department of Energy labs, Lawrence Livermore National Labs, who spend most of their time doing advanced research in physics for protecting our nuclear arsenal. They actually took their supercomputing technology, partnered with physicians and with experts in biology and chemistry, and were able to classify 100 duodecillion, which is one with 40 zeros behind it, of different compounds using a technique called molecular docking to get down to 20 compounds that could be identified as potential vaccines. And so what that did is probably brought the vaccine to market in a period that was an order of magnitude faster than what we'd normally see. So we'll talk more about some of the applications, but we're excited to be a partner with many scientists, research institutions, and commercial companies, because we basically, our principle is to advance the way people live and work, and we really enjoy helping advance humanity through technology and supercomputing.
Excellent. Thanks, Justin. And I'm Mark Michalski. I'm the CEO of Ascertain, which is actually born out of Northwell, a partnership between Northwell and Aegis Ventures. We're focused on some of the most challenging problems that healthcare provider systems face, and we're leveraging artificial intelligence to solve those problems. We're really focusing on Northwell as the incubator, the sandbox, and hopefully taking some of those solutions and bringing them to healthcare systems nationally and globally. So excited to talk to you more about that as well. But first, let's start here. When we were prepping for this panel, we realized that our panel might be the AI panel, but actually all the panels are the AI panel. Have you guys noticed that? And it's really fascinating to see how much interest, and some might say hype, is associated with generative artificial intelligence today. Why? Why are we talking about this now?
Well, I think we've had a consumer event, and it feels a little bit, excuse me, a little bit like 1995 with the internet. For those of you that remember that, the consumer event was ChatGPT. In fact, we've been using AI in healthcare and life sciences for many, many years. But what's exciting about having a consumer event like ChatGPT is that I think in many ways it reduces the barriers to technology adoption. And in Chelsea's comments earlier, she was talking about how there's some phenomenal innovations and we really struggle with dissemination, and that's been true in AI. I mean, for example, We've got partners that are doing classification AI on computer vision to help accelerate the identification of tumors, because they're trying to, in this case, it's in Singapore, and they're trying to address a shortage of radiologists. And that's a great example of something that's been around for some time. There's multiple companies doing it, yet it's the penetration is very small. So something like the ChatGPT moment gives us the opportunity to then hopefully open doors to say, well, gosh, where else can we use this? Who's not doing it? And create new forms for adoption. There'll also be tremendous technology as we look ahead in innovation and in using large language models and Gen AI in this field.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that human knowledge is encoded in language. That is, language is the medium that we use to express the things that we know and to record the things that we know. And so the thing that I think is really cool about what has happened over the past few years, I mean, obviously ChatGPT is the thing that brought these models to the broader consciousness, but they've been under development for many years. And the thing that I think has been really cool about what's happened in the past few years is that we can now actually bring AI to bear very effectively on broader human knowledge, right? And so that provides us with lots of opportunities to do things, like process clinical trials, process the scientific literature, help doctors stay abreast of what is happening, in the community without having to read 10,000 articles a day or whatever, however many articles are published. And so I think that's really the foundational aspect of what is different now than was, the case, say, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting, in our field in radiology, I'm a radiologist by training, we experienced the deep learning CovNet revolution a little bit earlier, it was in 2012. Right. And so one of the very first things that happened was there was a recognition broadly that this technology could really transform our field deeply. And I think, in 2017, we had Jeff Hinton saying that radiologists no longer needed to be trained because we'd all be automated away, something like 5 or 6 years later. Now we're sitting, and actually there's a pretty vibrant market for radiologists. What gives?
Yeah, actually, so this is I tell people that, the history of AI in biology so far is paved with grandiose promises and abject failure for the most part, right? I mean, there's obviously there's a notable example. There are several notable examples, right? AlphaFold is a great example. AlphaFold, which is a model that allows you to predict protein structures, which actually provides predictions for many proteins that are kind of on par with experimental data. But there are two things that are really important, I think, about AlphaFold, which is that, number one, it does provide predictions that are kind of robustly on par with experimental data. And number two, it's very good at telling you when it doesn't know, right? And I think that I'm not a radiologist, I don't know anything about radiology, right? But what I've observed, you have to be able to trust things that come from AI. And in order to be able to trust things, you have to know that they have to be able to tell you when they don't know, right?
Yeah, I was going to maybe add a couple thoughts, Sam. I think one is you touched on something implicitly, which is the power of AI. There's a lot of talk, and you hear people out in the public talking about, hey, AI is going to be smarter than the human. Actually, most of the power of AI, and I think certainly over the next decade, is to make humans smarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and you touched on this. I mean, it's giving people, all of the knowledge, but you still rely on the expert for judgment. And the other key thing, there's a couple principles we talk about in AI. One of them is explainability, is understanding why the model got to the answer. So we've all heard the stories about the ChatGPT examples or the standard large language model examples where someone wrote a term paper and it was wrong, or you ask it a question and it's out of date. The cost on that is quite low, but it's actually pretty powerful when you say, well, I'm going to have it write my press release or earnings transcript. Let's say if you're a communicator, and and in fact you're the experts, if it's correct and you assess it. And I think there's a ton of parallels to that we're seeing in the scientific community, where as long as I can understand how it got to the answer and I'm the expert, it's actually a massive accelerator for my knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think one of the things that will be most surprising, this is something we were talking about before the session. One of the things that will be most surprising, I think, from the next 5 years in AI will be the extent to which people actually do come to trust these systems. But that requires, it will require technical innovations. It will require a lot of innovation on the explainability side, right? But I think that work will happen, and I think that we will get to the point where we can actually we will know when we can trust the predictions that are being made.
You just beat me to the punch, so that means you need another answer. So you've got about 5 minutes to come up with the next answer about what will surprise you in artificial intelligence. You all know that's coming now. So before we get there, one of the things that I feel like we've talked a little bit about in terms of what's exciting. We've shared a little bit about some of the compelling work in research and high-performance computing. What I think we're learning in clinical medicine is that there's a real interest, excitement to get bots and artificial intelligence levered at things that are operational inefficiencies so that physicians can spend their time with patients again. I won't speak for all the medical professionals in this room, but I doubt if any of us really went into our medical training wanting to spend a lot of time in front of Epic or doing coding or billing. So that's one place I think we've heard a lot of excitement. But in your fields, where are you seeing the excitement? Where are you seeing a real enthusiasm for this technology?
Yeah, maybe what I'll touch on, I'm interested to hear more about what you're doing, Sam, as well, but what I'll touch on is, we obviously are not subject matter experts in the field scientifically. What we do is partner closely with our customers and users to drive innovation. And one of the ones that I think is really exciting in this field particularly is the concept of federated learning. And so if you think about distributed machine learning, something that we do quite a bit of, where people share data and share models, federated learning and a technology we built called swarm learning, what we allow people to do is actually train AI models and share only the model outputs, so the weights, how the model works, but allow the data to be private. And this was started with a German research institution called DZNE around Alzheimer's research, so scanning the brains of tens of thousands of people and trending that over time and seeing the evolution. We now have an institute in Aachen who's doing this around colon cancer. And I think there's a lot of applicability, because one of the other fundamental principles of AI is we need to respect the privacy of data and protect the security of data. And that sometimes gets a little bit, has been a little bit deprioritized in the name of accelerating the AI models. But in this field, it's actually been a place where innovation has been driven. And I'm excited to see what can come from that as we start to find more and more innovative problems to solve, whether it's in integrating some of the data in Epic and maybe integrating LLMs and scientific data and images to say, maybe we'll provide new predictions of potential therapies or treatments, or even identify new risks that are emergent well ahead of what current detection technologies are.
Yeah, I think that there are many ways in which these technologies will accelerate discovery. And I actually think that what Chelsea was talking about at the end of the last conversation was a great example. With like 9,000 diseases, 3,000 drugs, can we figure out by looking at clinical trial data what other combinations we should be testing? We have so much data, right? And we have, by comparison, so few people to actually analyze it. Right? What I want is I want a bunch of AI colleagues, right? Like AI research assistants that are going to go and try analyses on some of the data, go and explore some of this vast quantity of data that we're gathering. I think that will drive discovery, so yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. That's super compelling for a lot of us in the audience who do some biomedical research. Does this mean that we're producing a greater volume of discoveries, or does it mean that the quality and the character of the discovery changes as well?
I think both. One of the other innovations that's happened in kind of early stage biomedical research in the past 10 years is that next generation sequencing and other kind of similar emerging technologies have made it so that we can literally test like 100,000, 1 million, 10 million different hypotheses in like a single tube, right? These are various like high throughput screening technologies. We have no idea right now how to make sense of that data, right? You can test 100,000 hypotheses, but you can't come up with 100,000 hypotheses, right? And so I think that when you start, and so in some way, like marrying AI with like those kinds of new laboratory techniques is like, it's a perfect marriage. But then it does also change the character of the discovery, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you do want a discovery that a human can go back to and look at and say, oh yes, this makes sense, and like we can understand it. I mean, science is about understanding, and I think that's really important. Like, science is not just about modeling, it is also about understanding.
We have a customer today that's using cellular microscopy and using AI on those images and the data sets. And it's very interesting because here's a place where you can take a bunch of, let's say, failed compounds and then rerun them and test them, and you start to find different trends and data sets emerge, right? And the traditional, we all know for therapeutics, there's been a massive constraint in terms of you have to be able to deliver a therapeutic that treats a certain percentage of the population, and if it's got an adverse effect, it can't come to market. I mean, that's a great example where some of those hypotheses, maybe they're not net new discoveries, but they're deliveries of value, because if you could treat 5% of the population really, really well, and maybe some of the things that Chelsea was discussing around penetration, or even you think about the maternal death rates issue that she was raising, if you could find ways to solve the problem for that population in a very targeted base, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to the question that we lined up. So what is going to be surprising to everyone in the audience in the next 3 to 5 years with respect to artificial intelligence? So we're all expecting something. We're expecting that education's going to change. We're going to expect that much of the billing processes that we experience in healthcare is going to be automated, that some of our clinical notes are going to be generated with us and even maybe for us. But what are we not expecting?
I think people are going to be surprised by the extent to which AI does not actually take people's jobs. So I think it is,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of concern around that right now, and I totally understand why. But I think it's going to be a productivity tool. I don't think that at the end of the day, it's going to allow us to do more, right? I don't think it's going to, make humans obsolete.
I actually think we'll be surprised if we're talking about 3 years. I think we'll be surprised at how little progress we've made, right? And I think in 10 years we'll look back and go, wow, there's some things that are really different than they were a decade ago. But I think when you look at 3 or 5 year increments, actually the innovation cycle is pretty small. There'll be some interesting lighthouse examples, right? We'll see some. I hope we'll see some real breakthroughs where there'll be initial applications and some real impactful research in science. But I don't think we'll see the type of transformation we'll see a decade from now, 15 years from now.
So maybe a question that I've heard a couple times now: if ChatGPT gets just a little bit better, or we end up with ChatGPT 5, does that mean that we've achieved real artificial intelligence, and does that change your predictions about the future?
So there's a couple things about. First of all, I think one of the things that gets lost in AI with the romance of talking about it is fundamentally it's a really, really complex math equation. And so the challenge with that is that generating new intelligence, new insight still has to start with education and learning. And I'm very skeptical that we're going to see this massive advent of general intelligence. Will the machines get smarter? Yes. Without getting into whether it's GPT-5 or a different version of GPT-4, if you look at a lot of what we're doing right now, it's really and a lot of the innovation right now is around. There's technologies called prompt engineering. You'll hear this. This is like one of the hottest jobs right now. It's actually about managing the input and the output. What I do think we'll see is AI interrogating AI. So you've heard about this in the construct of deep fakes. So you'll see, the best way to figure out if an image is fake or a video of someone speaking is fake is actually to have a machine tell you that it's fake. I think you'll continue to see accelerations in areas like that. But I actually think, like Sam touched on, I think it's going to be quite a while before we have generative, true, general intelligence that a machine can generate without deep human interaction and training.
I will say, I think that human brains consist of many different parts, right? And in some ways, actually, the brain is like a bunch of different organs that kind of, all evolved at different times, and they're all in the same place, and they're all kind of, consist of similar kinds of cells. But like each different part of the brain does a different thing. I think of, GPT-4, GPT-5, whatever, like the language models are part of the brain. And we will eventually build, very general, very powerful intelligences. I, won't speculate on how soon. Probably more than 3 years, but we will get there. But it will not, I think, just be, GPT-5 and then GPT-6 and then GPT-7. We are now actually in the process for like the first time in human history constructing a brain, right? And we don't know how to do it yet. But we're going to find out.
I think you hit on something that's really, really key too, which is one of the exciting innovations is actually taking LLMs. We're seeing this a little bit with images and image creation, but it's taking large language models and then integrating all these other data sets. And there's many applications for this, but you start thinking about the cross correlation and linking things that humans are not able to link, or the data sets are too large, or the combination of the data sets is too complex. That's where there's going to be tremendous breakthrough. And I think that'll feel like it's general intelligence, but actually it's going to be more powerful.
Yeah, concretely, right? Like, the language models, they can't remember things. They don't have any memory, right? They don't have any motivation. They don't they don't know if they're getting closer to completing a task or not, right? And just making GPT-5 and GPT-6, like that won't solve those fundamental problems, right? So we need to be integrating other things into these systems, and there will be fundamental breakthroughs that are required to get there.
A lot to unpack there, and I think one of the things that I'm going to pick out from what you said, Justin, is like there's many different components, data sets that we need to put together to make a working brain, as you said. And that implies partnership. So coming back to what Michael said earlier, this underscores the importance of working across boundaries to make sure that this is done both equitably, safely, and effectively for our providers. So I want to thank you both for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks.